This is the On All Cylinders podcast,
powered by Summit Racing.
Your host for today is Summit Racing's Brian Nutter with special guest, LS engine expert Joseph Potak.
Here we go.
Hey everybody, it's Brian Nutter at Summit Racing, and I have a special guest with me here today. I've got Joseph Potak with me, who's been in this industry of LS and cams and engine development parts for as long as I have. His original position was over at Texas Speed. He went on to write many books on the subject, anything from building the engine itself to doing swaps and all those hard subjects that were hard to find information. They become the Bibles in a lot of reference materials for people ever since. And you just keep on going too.
I have a new book coming out next month on LS interchange, LS and LT interchange, actually.
Okay, so that's what we got coming up here for you today. And we're just going to talk about a little bit about the history, but also where we're going.
Thanks for Summit for hosting me and bringing me in here.
So when I heard you were in the area, I was like, oh, we got to, talk and catch up a little bit as we try to do. But, it seems like we can go for spans of time before we just get that time.
We've seen each other about every year or two. Yeah. Because we kind of go to the same events a lot.
We do, and also he's a great resource, for me. I develop a ton of parts, but he's been developing parts for as long as I have. And if I've got a weird thing that's happening, or if I want to bounce an idea off of it, I can talk to Joseph like I can a lot of other people. But what's kind of unique in what you've done is you have all that experience going back to the early days of Texas Speed, but you're also an educator, and you've written some of the best books in the business on LS and engines and swaps and all that. But before we get into the books, can you talk a little bit about how you started working in the industry?
The early days, I was a dealership tech before Texas Speed was even an idea. And what I would do is, that was back when you had, service manuals, real service manuals. The LS engine was new, but we also had satellite training where, it's kind of like a Zoom call now. But, somebody at GM would, broadcast out, their satellite training, and I would attend all of the stuff on the Gen 3 engine. There was no Gen 4 back then, of course. Yeah. So Gen 3 was new in the 97 Corvette. I learned as much as I possibly can because I'm a sponge for information and technical details. And I pick up stuff that other people don't. Right. Maybe even the people making the video.
Stuff, right.
And so I pick up everything. And so before the racing part of it, I was like, I drove a couple of LS powered cars. I'm like, this is game changing.
Right.
You had the Gen 2 LT. The Gen 3 was just so much better.
All aluminum engine. I mean, you got to say that was sprint car stuff. And to have a 410-pound engine with all of its tasty goodness of small blockdom, to have an aluminum block with a 15-degree cylinder head sitting on top.
Yes, and so fast forward, I was working at Skog and Dickey and doing LS stuff on the side, after hours, like
Nicky Fowler and company, right?
Yep, Nicky Fowler's a good friend. Still talk to them, see them at all the events also. Yep. I was doing the side work for Jason Mangum, co-owner of Texas Speed. Yep. And Trevor was Jason's friend, Trevor Doling. And we three would go to events and racing before Texas Speed. It was kind of the makings or infancy of Texas Speed. And we'd go and race shops, real shops, and we'd come home with the trophies.
Right.
We were winning, against other shops in Texas, and it was kind of an upset for them because they're this big shop with a budget of racing and stuff, and we're just some
serious
guys on an open trailer
Texas.
Showing up. And one day we just decided, we were talking, and it just made sense to take it to the next step.
Yeah.
And the three of us got together and started Texas Speed. So I'm one of the founding employees. I'm not the owner. Jason and Trevor are the owners. But it was just a good mesh and recipe of you have Trevor, kind of the business sense guy. Yeah. Jason, also business sense guy, but also
engineering.
Passion.
Right.
Yeah, very, very strong passion. And I have the guy kind of with the engine common sense that says, hey, that'll work, this'll work,
building
that won't
and
work.
tuning as well.
Yeah, a little bit of background tuning, mostly on the dyno. So wide open throttle tuning is the easiest one, idle tuning. I tune my own vehicles. Yeah. Jason was actually our tuner at Texas Speed for the longest time, growing the company. The company snowballed into what it is today. Yeah. At the peak, I think there was just under 100 employees, which is a big company.
Yeah.
I don't want to give their financials, but millions of dollars. Big company. They have sold it to private equity. And at the time the private equity came in, it was kind of my time. The writing was on the wall. My time was done.
Right.
And so I left and started doing some other stuff. I did some BTR stuff for them. And I do my own thing too.
So it's interesting though. So how you and I met originally was we were on LS1 Tech, which was before the Facebook user groups. There was LS1 Tech,
the go-to place.
And he and I have a love for this place, and it's there's a lot of great people on that group, or have spent time on that group, or learned from that group. It's instrumental in all of our lives, really growing up in this industry.
I'm a moderator on LS1 Tech still from day one, actually, till now. So the entire life of LS1 Tech, I'm a moderator. Granted, it's not as popular as it once was in its heyday, but it's still a source of information. It kind of led me into the books, too. All of my experiences kind of funneled me into this media career that I didn't even know was in my horizon. It kind of just fell on my lap, and
I don't know that it fell into your lap.
It took some work.
You worked. So how? I spent 15 years of my life in my early career at Wiseco Piston, and I get a call from you, and you're like, "Hey, I'm writing a book, and I'm looking for information on all the parts inside of this engine that make it great." And so I'd like to come and visit. And so you came up to Wiseco, and we just talked pistons and engines.
A little bit about why I reached out to Wiseco was Texas Speed did not sell Wiseco, and I wanted the book to not just show Texas Speed parts, which I had in my arsenal. I could use their stuff, all of their resources back then, but I wanted the book to be diverse. I even talked to Brian Tooley. I met Brian Tooley here when he worked for TrickFlow. So I had even though he was a competitor, I met everybody to do that first book. The first book's How to Build and Modify LS Series Engines. Very popular book. I think it's done over 30,000 copies sold. And if you think about books, a guy buying a book's not just buying a book and not reading it.
It's a reference. I've got that thing anytime I'm building an engine. I got my little library out there, and I can open it up to page 63 and find torque specs or whatever it is.
The torque specs, that's what everybody tells me about. I'm so glad you put the torque specs in there. And it was almost like the last thing. I kind of snuck it in. It's on the last page, but it's been a great resource for that. And the engine stuff hasn't really changed. Engines haven't changed. Like you said, with cams, they don't really change a lot.
So you've done revisions to the book, though.
Not this one. So we'll go through the series of books. The LS series, How to Build and Modify GM LS Series Engines. My first book, get my feet wet with the media. Second book, I did these back to back. How 93 to 02 F-Body Performance Handbook. It was a little bit late to the game, but a lot of really good information in that book. And you could pick up information that you could actually use on Mustangs or Challengers or what have you. It's a lot of generic info, but it's tailored around the 4th gen F-Body, LTs and LSs. From there, back to back, now you remember this is my third book. The swap book.
Which
is a passion of mine.
Bible.
Yes. So the first one, first published in 2010. So a lot of stuff back then with the swaps. It had to be you had to be a little bit resourceful. You're taking an old harness and cutting and splicing it, adding your own fuse box to make it work. It wasn't as easy as it is today, and so it has been a great book too. That first edition. As the years go by, there's been changes and new parts coming out, new swap ideas.
Things to make it easier.
New solutions to make it easier for the customer that does the swap in his driveway, the hobbyist. So for instance, in the first edition, Holley had really nothing at the time. I think how crazy that is. Holley has everything.
They reinvented their company with Bill Tichenor's, LS Fest. You think about it. They went from carburetors, and they're like, we got to do something new. And so they created LS Fest. And if you think about what they've done for Hemi and Coyote and all of those, is they took the bread and butter of helping the guy get the engine in his car and bolted in, and then headers and harnesses and computers and everything to run it, fuel system stuff.
So what gave me the idea of revising it is there's stuff, of course, if you wait around 3 months, there's always a new product, right?
Well, sometimes you need to jump.
Yeah. And so at the time, there was no Holley oil pans, no Holley Terminator X, no Holley accessory drives.
Right.
Well, fast forward, now that's a very common thing that everybody uses.
Right.
Everybody and their brother uses.
And it's getting hard to find an alternator bracket off of a 2002 F5.
Right. It's very hard. And it's a very inexpensive part. But finding the factory accessory drives is a challenge. Plus, they don't fit every application.
Right.
So, fast forward the revision 2, version 2, that I wrote in, I think, 2021 to 2022. So by then, there's you have the Holley oil pans, the swap pans, which add the options to add them to your first gen Camaro without cutting and welding
headers,
a stock pan.
right?
Headers. You have a plethora of intake manifolds now. You have a variety of motor mounts. ICT Billet, great guys. I met those guys at LS Fest, Texas, and that's how they got in my book.
Yeah.
I met the owner of ICT Billet, Alan, in the parking lot of the hotel.
And you can't know this stuff without doing it. And then they did it, and they're like, there's got to be an easier way. The solution. So this thing that I do product development, R&D, for Summit Racing, and that's you and I both figure things out the same way. It's just like this does not need to be this hard. So figuring out solutions.
We get the hard stuff to figure out, and a lot of times, an idea that doesn't exist, and we make it exist.
Yeah.
So anyway, in the book, what I wanted to do was update it with the new stuff that had come out in the last decade. So I reached out to the companies and got new current information.
Right.
Holley, I collaborated with Holley. Got some products to even put on my own car so I could document, hey, here's how you mount the ECM.
Right.
Here's a way to route the wiring. Holley Terminator X, think about this. If you don't have anything at all today, and you need a harness, an ECU, you need a way to tune it, Holley has all of that kind of all in one price.
Yeah.
If you go and use an OEM ECM, which I love OEM ECMs greatly because they're reliability and they have redundancy and they work. You can get one of those ECMs anywhere across the country. But if you build a swap, you need a harness, you need a computer, you need a tuning solution. HP Tuners has been great for the swap world and for modifying vehicles.
Yeah.
That price, you add up all those things, it's about what the Terminator X cost. Well, at the end of the day, you still have to pay a tuner, but the Holley makes it a little bit simpler for people to tune in their driveway.
And it's a resource where other people can help other people.
Yes,
That's one of the great things, about some of the user groups on Facebook, et cetera. It's just like, a new beginner, like, hey, I got a rough idle, I got this and that. And some people are willing to go out there and help and spend their time with them, guiding them through, did you check this, did you check that? Send me your log, send me your file, see if they see anything wonky about it. And it's enthusiasts helping enthusiasts.
And another thing that kind of changed from kind of the decade I first wrote it to the decade I revised it, is now you see a lot of EFI to EFI swaps. So, for instance, my third gen Camaro was stock 91 Camaro with a TPI engine, fuel injected, right?
Yeah.
It's got the good stuff. Back when I was a kid, that was high tech and crazy. Well, modern fuel injection and controls is so much better.
Yeah.
For instance, the 220 horsepower TPI engine was replaced by a stock engine LS6, 5.7 liter LS6 with 405 horsepower.
Right.
Really almost the same displacement.
Right.
It's wild that technology has changed. And that's,
power of the people.
Span.
And they put it in every damn truck.
Yes,
and it just makes it easy to go find an engine.
I don't think we've seen the end of the LS stuff. I do think it's kind of stabilized a little bit.
It's harder to find a Gen 3 or 4 engine that does not have 190,000 miles on it because they live to 200,000 so easy. So we are kind of going through this transition right now to Gen 5, and there's some pluses and minuses to it. I mean, in one way, the engine looks the same, but it came with things like electric power steering. It also had a high side and low side fuel system. So for those that don't know, with DI, it's pretty awesome technology, but the factory says, okay, I got a fuel pump in the fuel tank that I'm ramping up and down in relation, and the engine is going up and down, the mechanical pump and the engine at the exact same time. And that's not so easy for your home builder to do.
No, and just the understanding of how that stuff works.
Right.
And the swap book is mainly catered to LS stuff, but the LT is a close sibling or cousin to the LS. So a lot of stuff kind of align as far as the same issues you have to do as far as motor mounts, exhaust, cooling system modifications. And Holley does have, the Terminator X for the LT1, the direct ejected one. I believe currently today they're the only aftermarket solution for DI. A lot of them, people with swaps will actually revise and go back to port injection to make it easier, because the swaps are a complicated animal. GM does have a harness too for the DI, the connect and cruise. The only thing I don't like about the GM one, and not to throw anything bad about them, is they don't have the modern transmissions support with it. Now that may change, but how awesome would it be to have an 8-speed or 10-speed in your 69 Camaro with your modern LT power plant? I think that would be a game changer if they added that. I'm working on some stuff like that too on my side hustle.
It's pretty cool, and there's some weird things like a lot of the people. You and I come from building and tuning carburetors and setting up a distributor and all of that stuff, and then we evolved into injection. Now, the young men and women that I meet today, they've never tuned a carburetor or dialed in a distributor. So as foreign as injection is to a lot of the older folks, carbs are to the younger folks today, and I love it. It puts us back on the footing again. But they've got carb style intakes for LT, not for putting carbs on, but you can put your Holley Terminator on top of it. 4 little bolts.
Well, a lot of people want that classic look, and if you look at the cover of this revision, it actually has carb style air cleaner on it and a single plane intake, and then you have the coil packs on it. So it looks the part of the classic look.
That is something I didn't get for the longest time because I wanted fuel injection to look like a spaceship, and then it turns out I was completely wrong. People love their
people want the heritage look of the way the car came. They want to open up. And sometimes the fuel injection stuff is kind of ugly, especially the truck intakes and stuff. They just don't look good. The factory truck intakes. But people want to dress it up and make it look good. And there are some examples of that in the swap book for sure. But yeah, things have changed. Technology changed faster on the swap side than actually the engine side, which is kind of hard to comprehend even. I do want to update my first book at some point too and make it a little bit more modern, just because there was, when that book was written, originally 2008, the LS kind of continued from the factory to 2016.
Which takes us into our next subject is what's next. You have so many people in this industry that are friends.
I showed you my list of my networking connections. It is just tapping the top of it. What's next for me is I want to bring forums back to life. So I started hpcult.com, and I'm going to start just putting all of my articles, push rod length articles, a resource, kind of like your blog on Summit's blog, OnAllCylinders.com. It's just a go-to for shops, competitors.
You Google something you need help with. That's the goal, is to help people find something.
This network is going to involve as many of my resources as possible, but I want a community where we're helping the end user, where they could read an article or ask a question, and somebody's there to answer it, but it also stays as a living archive on the internet versus the social media where it disappears.
Well, I mean, you've built a tremendous number of parts over the years through hard, dedicated work. You have a lot of firsts, during this time, and you've given that to people. People are running around with your cams, hundreds of thousands of miles on some of your parts out there, and it's got to be rewarding for you.
It is rewarding. I'm pretty humble about it. I don't really go and say, hey, look what I did. I did this book. I helped start this company. I don't broadcast that. I like to be the normal car guy and just kind of sit and listen and learn.
You're a pretty humble
guy. And I observe a lot of stuff. And sometimes I may look like a dummy to some people, but I don't want to talk or maybe talk about something that maybe that I confuse them. And I like to listen a little bit more than I like to talk, it seems. I'd be doing a great disservice if I didn't talk about my next book.
Okay, tell me about it.
Through CarTech publications. CarTech has a plethora of LS-themed books, LT books also. I have a co-author with this, Jefferson Bryant. He wrote an LS swap book also, like I did. So we have a parallel kind of book. Well, you could get stuff out of both books, actually. I bought his book after I wrote mine. He co-authored with me an LS and LT interchange manual.
Whoa.
So this is going to be, if you think about the small block Chevy interchange manual that's been around for decades, the big block Chevy interchange manual, same thing, been around for decades.
Right.
This kind of like legacy books. So when I was invited to do the LS book, I was like, yeah, let's go. I have the resources to do it. Now it got too big and crazy for just one person.
Right.
So Jefferson, I'm glad it was Jefferson that was able to collaborate with me. And it is coming out, I think the target date's in February next month. It may take a few days for the print and everything and the covers and all things to where it's actually available.
Right.
But I believe it's available for pre-order.
Okay.
So that'll be interesting when that comes out.
Well, just for everybody here at Summit, going fast, cool parts and all that stuff is a part of it, but the education for the customers is really, a big part of it to guys like Joseph and I want to say thank you for that, because it's something where, you may not want to be a hero to a lot of people, but you've helped hundreds of thousands of people go faster. They may not even know your name.
Right.
But at one point they came across your work, and I just want to say thank you for that.
Oh, yeah. It's been my pleasure. It is fulfilling to know that I've helped people.
Yeah.
And one of the funniest things, I never realized that this would happen. I'll be at LS Fest or PRI, and somebody will come in, and I'll be talking to them for 5-10 minutes. And you could see the wheels turning in their head. They'll see my name, and they're like, I know that name. And they're like, where are you from? I'm like, well, I'm associated with Texas Speed or BTR at the time, whatever that is, whatever I'm representing. And I'm like, well, I have some books out. And sometimes I forget that I've done them. Because, I don't refer to my own books. I have for torque specs, but I don't use them because
you like this assigned
by the
copy?
way, here's my book. It's not something that is in front of me all the time that I'm broadcasting or advertising. I like to be just a normal car guy too, and in most cases I am. I'm the guy working in the garage till 2 a.m.
That's right.
Almost every night, and I just want to be the regular guy, but if I could take my knowledge and experience that I've learned to help people, whether it be on my forums, be in my books, I mean, that's what it's all about, is helping everybody else.
That's right. It feels good. So with that, folks, I want to say that you have to get started. Go out to the garage, take things apart, go run them, blow them up, rebuild them, make them stronger. You can get into this industry if you want, like he and I have. It's a pretty cool thing that we get to do. And I just want to say thank you for coming in today and dropping in.
And if you think about it, it's other people's dream jobs, and we get to do it every day.
Yeah, it's true. Well, with that, got to check out your books. Motor Cars, right?
Motor books for my first 3 books, Car Tech for the 4th book.
Got it. A lot of fun. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
This has been the On All Cylinders podcast.
Powered by Summit Racing.
Check out new episodes coming soon at OnAllCylinders.com.
OnAllCylinders.com.
Thanks for listening.
See you next time.